Well, I know you love music, and I love music, but I also love comedy. I love stand-up comedy. In fact, I did stand-up comedy for pretty much a decade here in LA, and I'm so excited to have our guest on the show today because he has taken his love of comedy and music and brought them together and has put out several comedy albums. He plays all the time, but you may know him from That Metal Show. My guest today is Don Jameson. Don Jameson was the co-host of That Metal Show with Eddie Trunk and Jim Florentine, and he's done a lot of other stuff. He's toured on the road with Andrew Dice Clay. He's an Emmy winner. He has a lot of sports content and comedy content. The guy has been in the business for a long time, and he's a great dude, a funny dude, and I'm excited to have him on the show today. So let's get down to it, and let's get to the interview with Don Jameson on Waterproof Records. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
Okay. Before we get things going, we're going to talk a little bit about DistroKid. That's right, distrokid.com is how you're going to get your music out there right away. I know you're working on a song. You've been writing this thing. It's all bass-heavy music, and it's got congas, and it's got rattlers, and somebody comes in with a synthesizer, and then somebody comes in and just kind of screams loudly, and you're like, this experimental masterpiece has to hit the world, and I need to show it to them now. And you can do it through DistroKid, and if you go through my link, you get 30% off your first year of putting your music everywhere. I mean everywhere. You upload it, and it's there. It's Apple, it's Spotify, it's YouTube, it's all the places. So make sure you check out my special link, which is distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Why VIP? Because that's what you are, a VIP of Waterproof Records. So check out DistroKid. But it's time to get to my guest, and I am so excited to welcome him on the show today. So let's not waste any more time. Welcome to Waterproof Records, Don Jameson. I'm so happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Jacob, thank you very much. Good to hang with you for a little while today.
Yes, I love that. That Metal Show royalty in the house. I love it.
Metal Show royalty with no royalties.
Right. Sir Don Jameson. Yes.
Drink our tea properly.
Yes, absolutely. Sip. One pinky up, right? Very proper. Right off the bat, we're both diehard music fans. Obviously, the world knows that about you. You're very well versed in your rock and your metal, and you've been in the game for a long time. But we also intersect with stand-up comedy. I also did stand-up here in LA for about 9-10 years. Kind of stopped before the pandemic, but now all this stuff I put on the internet seems to be taking up my time. But I'm dying to get back out on stage, which you are doing all the time. And I'm so stoked to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm grateful to still be doing it, Jacob. And you know what? Sometimes a little break is okay.
Yeah.
The business can definitely grind you down, and
it does.
That's why everything about my new album is related to Motorhead, and part of my motto in comedy it has always been from the words of Lemmy, which is don't let them bastards grind you down.
Yes,
so I live by that.
Yes, absolutely. And you just dropped just a couple weeks ago, your 5th comedy album. That's right.
Yeah, this stand-up album.
I love it.
No Sleep Till McSorley's.
No Sleep Till McSorley's. And for those of you who don't know what McSorley's is, it's the oldest Irish pub in New York. That's right.
Yeah, opened in 1854.
Jesus.
So it's there's a lot of Abraham Lincoln drank at McSorley's, and
really,
John Lennon used to drink at McSorley's, and
that's amazing.
Now they're reduced to me drinking at McSorley's.
What was the inspiration behind choosing that to be the spot for your 5th album?
Well, I've been going there for a long time. It's the thing I tell people about McSorley's. If you've never been there, it's actual social media.
Right.
You go into a bar anywhere now, this is what you see. Everyone is looking at their phone. Nobody's socializing. Nobody's talking.
Right.
They're all talking with people through their devices.
Yeah.
And McSorley's is a place where you sit down. They only have light and dark ale There's no wine. There's no booze. There's nothing fancy. It's just you drink their beer. You drink two at a time. They come in these little glass mugs, and they sit people at your table from all over the world, and you just hang all day.
Yes.
And within a couple hours, you're best friends with people in Portugal and Canada and South America, and you're making plans to go to Norway for the summer to visit, your new drinking buddies.
Yes.
So I just said, with this material, talking about how crazy things are in the world these days, that's, where me and my friends solve a lot of the world's problems in McSorley's while enjoying some McSorley's ale.
I love it. I love it. There's nothing like a good dive bar, a local watering hole. That's always been one of my favorite things, is to find a spot that I know I can count on. You befriend the bartenders, you have the familiar faces, and then you have those nights where you're sitting next to somebody you've never met before. You strike up a conversation, and they're just such fascinating people. And that, I feel like, in some ways, has become a lost art, not necessarily for our generation, but I think that for the younger generation, there is this really cool thing about chatting with somebody from a different walk of life over a course of night. You never see each other again, but you learn something about that person, and it just reminds you that, like, we're all kind of similar in a weird way, So I love that.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of it is meeting people from different cultures and different ways of life, but you're bonding over this place. There's sawdust on the floor, and you're just hanging out. And I asked him, I said, how much would it be to rent the place out for the night so I could do my record here? And the owner said, how long have you been coming here? I said, 30 years. She said, you paid enough.
That's amazing. That's the mentality of a place like that, right? It's like you've been patronage for a long time. So you've been in New York a long time. Are you born and raised New York? Is that your hometown?
I've always lived in New York and New Jersey. I mean,
Okay.
I've been back in Jersey now for the last 15 years. But yeah, I lived a few blocks from there. So that's originally, why I started going in there.
Yeah.
And then when I just realized what a special place it was, they've never done shows in there before. So
Really?
I was the first one. They said, well, how are we going to do this? I said, the people I come in there and drink with are going to be all the people that are going to work on my album. My friend
Totally.
Rob can build the stage, and my friend Dan can video it. My friend Frank can direct, the special. Like we'll bring in a PA system and everything. So all you got to do is clear a little space in the corner for our stage, and away we go.
Away we go. That's awesome, dude. That is so great. Yeah, comedy, it's a beast. I started probably in about 2011, 2012 was when I did my first open mic. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about when you dipped your toe in the world of a stand-up and kind of how it all started. Did you go to a mic and walk in, and did you have that moment, where somebody in the back is giving you the light and you're trying to get through those first round of jokes? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think the industry's been trying to give me the light for 24 years, but yet the great words of Lemmy Kilmister, when asked what does he attribute the longevity of Motorhead to, he said, if you don't quit, they can't get rid of you.
I love it. It's so great.
Another thing that applies perfectly to the comedy business, but here I am still doing it, and it did. It starts out with that first time, which is all I ever expected to do. It was one time, and no, it wasn't even at a regular comedy club or even an organized open mic. It was a redneck bar in South Jersey. Nobody even knew there was a show. They were watching TV.
Totally.
It's a place where they've been drinking all day. The microphone, I didn't know what, I had maybe 5 minutes of not good material.
Right. Like all of us. Right.
Yeah. Now I have, 45 minutes of not really good material, but, except for the material on the new album
now. Yeah. I was going to say, except for the album's all gold, guys. It's all gold.
No, listen, I make fun of myself because you really have to, but I'm very proud of the material on this record, but it starts with that first time, and I got about 4 mercy laughs, and but that was enough, Jacob.
Right.
I came off stage and I was like, that probably sucked to somebody watching from the outside, but to me, I headlined Madison Square Garden that day because I already had that going inside me, like I got to do this again as soon as possible. You got to do it.
Yeah. It's amazing, and I'm going to say to the audience that might not know stand up, because the majority of my audience is, obviously comes to as being music fanatics and whatnot. And I've talked a little bit. I had a guest on the show a couple months ago. He does a show called 2 Minutes to Late Night. His character is Guarsenio Hall. And he it's so great because he wears the corpse paint. And it's this great show. It's in the New York area, and he and I met coming up and stand up in LA, but he bounced for the East Coast a long time ago. But we kept in touch, and I saw him, having success on there. But for the people who don't know about stand up, when you start out, usually, when people ask me like, where do I go? What do I start with? You find an open mic, a shitty one preferably. Don't go to the one that like all the all-stars are hitting up to work out their sets. Go somewhere and then they'll usually give you 5 minutes or whatever it is, and then they give you the light, which is just some guy in the back standing there with an iPhone now, and flashing a light at that minute warning or whatever your morning is. And then you get through it, and you the majority of people in the crowd are other comedians trying to get up there and do it, or they're people drinking who have zero interest in listening to your comedy. So it's a great boot camp. It's a great starting place to just get your feet wet, get those jokes out. And like you probably tell people, and I do too, I'm like, the only way to get better at stand-up comedy is to do stand-up comedy. You can't rehearse at home in front of the mirror and get better. You just have to be in front of crowds over and over and over again. Right. Yep.
And no matter how long you do it, Jacob, I mean, it's, obviously you're supposed to get better as you go. And
right.
So once you've, quote unquote, paid your dues and you actually start playing proper comedy clubs, and you realize like, wow, this is easy compared to, what I went through before. But it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter what kind of stature you've got, whatever kind of credits you've got in your career. There is always an audience waiting around the corner to take you down a few pegs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to talk to you about that. I was like, that is one of the most fascinating things you experience as you do it year after year, is you'll have a joke one night that crushes. The audience just goes for it. They love it. Your pacing, everything that came out it lands. And then you do the same thing night two, the next location, and it just falls flat. And you just start realizing it's not that you're quote unquote not funny or that the joke isn't funny. It's just there's something about the room. You're going to connect with people. They're going to hear the bit. They're going to hear the joke. They're going to laugh. And you have to just take it in stride and know every show it's like a new show. It's a clean slate. I gotta win them over tonight, So like I know, right?
Yeah. It's true, but again, hopefully you get better and you get more consistent. Of course, I'm going to go out and headline a show tonight, and I expect it to go great. But there's a funny moment on the album, because I try to keep them as real as possible. I did tape 2 shows, but the only material that came from the second show was like 4 bits that I just forgot in the first show. I like to keep it as a continuous and in the flow of what I'm doing, even if there's a flub sometimes, or even if there's a mistake. And there's a joke at one point in the album where I tell it, and you can tell from my delivery I was expecting a much bigger laugh.
Right.
And then you could hear the crowd laugh at me pausing for the big laugh, which never comes.
Right.
And then I go, well, it doesn't matter because I can add a bigger laugh in when we edit this. Then that gets a big laugh. Well, I left all that in there. I left the joke not getting a good response because I got 3 laughs out of it instead of the big one that I expected.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, let's not chop this up. This is funny the way it is. This is what happened in the moment. A joke that usually gets a huge laugh got an okay laugh, and we just left it as it was, and I love that.
Absolutely. And that is, I think, a trend that has been happening in comedy and stand-up recently, which is the transparency, the truth of it all. I think that, when we were kids and growing up, and even long before we were born in comedy, it was so much of the showmanship, and everything had to be tight and punchy, and you had to cut out all the fat. And I think that maybe because we live in such a, everybody's on camera all the time. We see everything, our phones in our pockets. You can't hide. And so today's younger generation, especially, they're like, I just want the truth. I just want what's real. I don't want bullshit. I want to see the fall. I want to see the trip. And there's just a humanity in that. Because it just makes us all kind of be like, we're not pretending that we're better than anybody else. We're here to have a good time. We're here to laugh. So I want you to hear me when I things don't go my way. And the moment I acknowledge that, you can see that this is how it goes. This is how life is, right? Just look at it and go, dust yourself off and move forward, right?
Yeah, I think two things can be true simultaneously, which is you can be very precise, and you can, yes, there are certain words or inflections or lines and certain timings that have to be true each time that you do a particular joke or a bit.
Totally.
But you could also have room to play.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors is Andrew Dice Clay, who I did 10 years on the road with.
Yeah, I saw you went on the road with Andrew Dice Clay. That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's become one of my close friends. But what I took from him, he was already my comedic idol before that.
Yeah.
But working with him and watching him on stage, because even though Dice, he's filthy, but his word choices are so specific. Everything he says is precisely thought out in a certain way. But he never does bits the exact same way.
Yes.
And I always loved that he kept that looseness about what he did, because that's how I work as well. Like I sort of write down, I sort of think in my head, what's the first joke I'm going to go up with tonight? And then I kind of go from there. Let's feel it out a little bit. Let's have a little fun. And when you do that, there's danger, right? I mean, there's danger that that things might not flow the way that they're supposed to.
Sure.
But there's also could be a big payoff from that as well, because you're leaving room to create some stuff in the moment.
Yeah, spot on.
We're getting way too deep here for people. I know. I hear computers clicking off.
Everybody's like, this is called Waterproof Records, you asshole. We're supposed to talk about bands, but I can't resist because this show is dedicated, of course, to albums and music and things that just inspire us. But whenever I get a chance to talk to another comedian, it is always fun to talk about that process, because we're all very different, the way we approach the work and the way that we do it. But there are these consistent things that we run into, and it's fun to talk about, because for those of you who've never thought about standing on a stage and doing a joke, standing in front of a crowd, because I know that terrifies the majority of people in the world, public speaking. Jerry Seinfeld once said in one of his old classic jokes, he said, the number one fear in the world is public speaking. Number two is death. And he said that means more people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy, which I always thought was such a great line. And it's so true. You tell people and they're like, I could never do it, man. I could never do it. But I think that it's such a thing that one time in your life, give it a try, get up there, try to tell a joke in front of a crowd, and then you will have an immense respect for anyone that goes up night after night, crushes or bombs. You'll just have an immense respect for them. So that's my advice to everybody listening to the show. Go try a night at an open mic.
I think it's a great advice. And for the people, for the record lovers out there, especially the vinyl lovers, my new record is coming out on vinyl.
That's awesome.
So yeah, if we want to talk about records, I still have a lot of my old comedy LPs from when I was growing up, George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Cheech and Chong. So, starting with my last record, which I recorded in LA actually, called Denim and Laughter, I put that out on vinyl and that all sold out. So this new one, No Sleep Till McSorley's, that's also coming out on vinyl. And that's, along with the Motorhead packaging and all that, that's my tribute to, a band that I love, of course, and the music that I love, and the format of listening to music, which I love the most, which is vinyl.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge vinyl nut as well. So that's awesome. So everybody should definitely check that out. And it does harken back to the days of the comedy records. When I was growing up, my dad, I remember my parents had all the vinyl, and I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so my parents were pretty strict and religious, and I remember going through these old, classical albums and film soundtracks and country music, and then I found Steve Martin's Comedy Is Not Pretty, and I pulled it out and I looked at my dad and I was like, Dad, what's this? And he was like, that's not appropriate for you. But I absolutely snuck a listen to that album and became a Steve Martin fan from a very, very young age, just because he was so weird. And that was probably one of the definitely the sparks that inspired me to want to make people laugh for the rest of my life. So there's nothing like a good comedy record to put on. So that's awesome.
And especially one that you're not supposed to be listening to.
Totally. So saying that, this is a perfect transition. So you grew up on the East Coast, born and raised over there. So when you were growing up, did you have a musical household? Did your parents play records a lot around the house, or did you find that you had to discover music on your own independently?
Yeah, I mean, just be on the radio in the car and stuff. But yeah, not really in the house that much. I mean, I vaguely remember the Bee Gees and Johnny Mathis and stuff like that, but nothing even approaching, what I ended up becoming such a big fan of. And that's, the music that's been such a huge fabric of my DNA. Sure. But, I don't know, to this day, I can always remember that Kiss Destroyer was my first album, but I can't remember how I got to it, because I didn't grow up in a house where there was rock and roll playing or anything even close to that. I must have saw an ad on TV or something like that. And when you're 11 and you see, these guys who are rock stars and comic book characters and superheroes all rolled up in the one, that's what you want,
Yes.
And, I asked for it, I guess for a birthday or something. And
you got it.
I got it, but I don't know how I really got there. I can't really remember.
That's amazing. Do you have any siblings?
I have a sister. She's not. She's not a voracious music lover like we are.
Yeah.
But I was
older or younger. Younger. Oh, well, that makes sense, because you're that. So you were so for a lot of people that I know, it's like they had a cousin, they had a friend, or they had an older sibling that was like their gateway, their path. But you didn't have that really. So you were discovering it on your own. And you just, this is his waterproof record that he chose this week. The waterproof record he has is Kiss Destroyer, 1976. And so you're a kid, and that cover, right? This is a comic book. This is the merging of worlds for a kid growing up. He sees rock and roll, comics, action, excitement, and Kiss is one of those bands that is before, I am just a little while after you. So I miss the whole Kiss wave growing up, because it's not happening when I'm growing up. But all of my idols love Kiss. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up, the Smashing Pumpkins were my number one band, and Billy Corgan was an avid Kiss lover. And then I would listen to lyrics by Weezer where he's like, Ace Frehley. And I'm like, so I know that my guitar heroes, the guys that I'm sitting there trying to learn the guitar riffs for, they grew up listening to Kiss, and you grew up listening to Kiss. So you sit down, you put on that album, and what was the feeling that you got? Was it just these riffs, rock? Did it just the whole experience start to back, the thing that we have, which is an album, which is like a book, right? It's like a journey, start to finish. So tell me about hearing Destroyer for the first time.
Well, that's really sort of the story of putting that record on in particular. Is, it starts with this, this guy in a car, and he's flipping through the radio stations. And so the story now begins, right? It's a guy who's in his car, he's flying down the road, and he's trying to find a radio station to crank some tunes up. And then this unbelievably bombastic introduction of music just cut in, and it's instant. It's just like this shot of dopamine into your brain, and you're hooked. And now here's Paul Stanley telling you the story.
Yes.
This guy trying to get to a show, and, get up, everybody, leave their seat, get down, all that stuff. And you're like, now you're there at the concert, and everything is so vivid in your mind when you're listening to it. And then bam, right into King of the Nighttime World. Woo! I mean, it just, you don't even get a breath until like halfway through the album, So, it's just a very powerful musically emotional experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This was in my research because, you know, you're teaching me more about Kiss because, of course, I know the hits. I know the songs. I saw them, you know, when they were having their revivals, when I was coming up and having more attention on them. But I mean, like I mentioned before, my house, very, very strict religious household. So you're telling me Kiss? I mean, one look at Gene Simmons and my mom was like,
Yes,
you know, so yeah. So, oh, your parents too? Were they freaked out a little bit?
Yeah, that's why I kept it.
Of course, you have to.
My parents are like, "This is cool. Can we borrow your record?" I'd be like, "I'm not into this anymore."
Yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, this is their fourth album, and this is the one that really explodes them on the scene because they are adding many more layers, orchestral. You know, they're going for that epic sound, and this is where the world gets to see what they're capable of. And I can't even imagine what that must have felt like back then, and really, you know, made them the rock royalty, like we talked about earlier, that they are to this day. And this is also where the whole notion that they were in cahoots with the devil. This is where it was really coming about. This is where the kids in Satan's service and just the song titles and everything. So, you know, which only makes us kids go, yes, please, more. I want more.
More Satan, please.
More Satan, please.
Well, how did you, because you grew up in a much stricter household than I did, how did you find music?
So mine was, I had an older brother, and Tulsa was not the boon of hot music coming in. You know, like sometimes I'll make these videos on social media and they'll go, well, how did you not know about the band before this time? And I'm like, dude, when you grew up where I did, you had MTV, you had what was on the radio. So you had to stay up late and watch Headbangers Ball, and my parents wouldn't let me watch Headbangers Ball. So I had to like sneak a VHS in and timer record it, which I got busted for. And I put in the VHS, I record, you know, Headbangers Ball, and timed it for when I was in bed. I come home from school, I pop it in, and it's just like old reruns of MASH. And my dad comes in, he's like, you didn't think I noticed? You didn't think I saw you? And I was like, fuck. So I would do things like that, and my brother and I, we found this college radio station that was, you know, nearby Rogers State College in Oklahoma, and they would play the weirdest shit, like alternative stuff, but also they had these metal you know, we were just being exposed, and metal was really the first big explosion in my life of like, what is this? I want more of it, just the riffs, the speed. And this was all, you know, I think I probably saw Metallica's One on Headbangers Ball. And I know that at the time, that began to get a little polarizing, right? Because they were like, we're not going to make videos for MTV. And here comes this like slow song at the beginning, and then it gets heavy. So I'm sure a lot of the Kill 'Em Alls and the Ride the Lightnings were like, fuck is this? You know? So, but for me, I was really excited about that, and that's where I started learning more about Testament and Pantera and Slayer. And Slayer was the big, for me, was the one that I was really enticed, but I was also frightened of. I really loved seeing Seasons of the Abyss on MTV, but I would also like go to church with my family, and I'd be like, God, am I going to hell for listening to Slayer? You know. So that was really the doorway for me. And then my brother and I would just chase music obsessively. And this is, you know, pre-internet, like you and I both know. And so you just had to have friends, you know, people you hung out with, somebody who'd get you a copy of the tape. They dub it for you, and then you hide what the name of the band was, and you know, sitting over there putting this. Oh, this is
reruns.
This is Willie Nelson, Mom. This is who this is. This is who I'm. It's Patsy Cline. So that was really what opened the doorway for me to metal, and made me such a big fan of that genre. And so that's how kids in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the early 90s found music, I guess.
Yeah, but a lot of people did, because, you know, I had to depend like on the guy at the record store in the mall, you know, near where I lived. You know, first I walk in, I look for the guy with the long hair. Yeah. That's the guy who's going to like the same music as me. Yeah. You know, so that's how I started to find a lot of my early records. And then you're right. Once you get hooked into this kind of music, then the hunt is on.
Yeah.
You know, whether you have internet or you didn't have internet, like I'm gonna keep seeking this stuff out.
Yeah.
You know, which is how I came upon like the Metal Massacre albums that Brian Slagle put out in the 80s, which turned into Metal Blade Records, which turned into the label that I've done all my stand-up albums with,
right,
which is incredible. But those are the first records that I was discovering, you know, a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal bands,
totally, and
tons of stuff that wasn't popular, or you could only get their album on an import. You know, and you know the record store and the mall wasn't going to have any fancy imports, but you know, so you do anything you can to seek this stuff out, and and I still do. I mean, I'm always still hunting and searching for new bands and new sounds.
Yeah, absolutely, me too. And it's now I'd say our biggest obstacle, right, is there's just so much available. That's the more challenging part, is that because of streaming and, you know, things like Apple Music and Spotify and YouTube, bands can put their stuff out really easily. You know, back when we were growing up, it's like you had to at least have a 4-track to put something together, and then you're passing out demos to people in your neighborhood mainly. But we live in a time now where a band in the middle of nowhere can record on their computer in their basement and push it to the world. And so because of that, it just makes it more challenging to kind of sift through and find something that's really good. And I still rely upon buddies of mine that are diehard music fans, and they're like, "Oh, you got to check this out. I went and saw this band last night in the opener. Incredible," you know. And that still seems to be the case. You find the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true, because you know we almost didn't have Metallica over about $50. We almost didn't have Metallica, because the very first Metal Massacre album was the first time anybody in the world heard Metallica. The song Hit the Lights was the last song on the first Metal Massacre, and Brian had been friends with this young guy named Lars, who knew all the European bands like Brian did, and so they became fast friends. And Brian basically said, "Hey, if you could put a band together, I'll put you on one of my compilation albums." So he had been jamming with James at the time, and you know, they put a little band together and decided to call it Metallica, and they recorded Hit the Lights, and but they didn't have enough money to master it.
Wow.
They needed $50 for the mastering, and the deadline was like the next day. And one of Brian's friends, you know, I think he called around, and someone goes, "I'll put up to $50 so we can get these guys on the album." And they saved it, and they put it on there, and it's famously misspelled Metallica with 2 T's and 2 L's.
Yes. I think I've seen the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. But because that's the way it was back then. You couldn't just open your laptop and record an album like you can do now.
Right.
It's a lot easier. So you're right. There's a lot more to sift through. But I listen to a tremendous amount of music, and I can get a sense pretty quickly, you know, what's going to be a good quality and what's not. And there's a lot of great new stuff out there.
There really is. I've said that time and time again on this show, because I know a lot of people in our generation, they go, "There's just no good music anymore." I'm like, nah, not true at all. You're just not putting in the legwork because you're not 15 years old and have all the energy in the world to go through a million different bands. There's tons of amazing music. There always will be amazing music. And it just takes, you've got to be invested and passionate about finding it, right? So... But
and I'm lucky. I'm friends with so many musicians, and
you
so
are.
A lot of times they'll turn me on to other bands, or they'll say, "Oh, we're bringing this band on the road. You should check them out." And you know, and I'll discover a lot of bands that way. So at least okay, these guys who I love this band that they're working with. So I'll check them out. And so there's a lot of ways to do it. You know, I mean, I use the streaming services. I prefer physical product always. But the streaming service is a quick way to like listen to something, try to get a sense of it, and then if I like it, then I'll go out and buy it.
Yeah, yeah. You can't deny the ease of use, and that's the thing is I love my records. I love listening to physical media, but that it's, you know, we drive, we're on the move. We've got our phones. I can be walking. I can put in, you know, headphones and I can listen to a song. So it is good for that, but it's great when you love something, you dig in even further, you start buying what they put out, and then you go support them live, which is a great feeling, and I still love to do that. But you are friends with so many musicians, and it is so cool. It's been so cool to just see all the things and all the pots you've had your hands in over the years. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, how do we get from being that 11-year-old kid listening to Kiss Destroyer and being like, fuck yeah, this is amazing, all the way to that metal show, and I mean Comedy Central and hosting shows, and, you know, being introduced and on the road that introduced Dice Clay. What was the journey that really led you to being not only in music, but in music entertainment, you know, being kind of this figurehead?
Just the pure love of it, you know, the pure love of heavy music, plain and simple. And it doesn't matter what the kind. I don't care if it's glam metal, thrash metal, doom metal, black metal, Norwegian church burning, Western gender fluid metal. It doesn't matter.
Anything.
If it's good, it's good. And I've just always had a genuine love for it. And, you know, obviously one of my best friends in the world is Jim Florentine.
Yes, your partner.
Yeah, much my partner, yes. And we're like an old married couple. We don't have kids. And, but he loves and has the same passion for heavy music that I do. Yeah. And, you know, that was something obviously that we bonded over as much, or if not even way more than comedy. But, and then, you know, we throw Eddie Trunk in the mix here, and we kind of got something going. You know, we got we got the straight man now, and we have the two goofballs, but and Eddie with sort of the real street cred in terms of, you know, having been you know, on the other side of it as a record company executive and a radio personality and a producer and things like that. And then you just have these other two guys who you know, just bring their fandom into it. I thought that, you know, that was a great combination, the three of us, to do that. And then from there, it just snowballed in terms of, you know, bands asking me to go out on the road and open for them, and then other hosting opportunities and things like that. So one thing just leads to the other. But, you know, I work in two fields where my greatest passions lie. It's sports and the sports as well too. I mean, that's
you did sports as well.
Other conversation, but music and comedy is, you know, I got one foot in both worlds at all times.
Yeah. And was it always just on the East Coast? It just happened to be kind of the circles that you ran in, you know, over in New York and Jersey, and you know, you're going out to see bands, you're finding those friends, Jim, and meeting Eddie, and just kind of building this thing together, just kind of being in the right group of people. Do you feel that's what it was? It was just where you were located was an essential part of it?
Yeah, I guess, because, you know, between New York and New Jersey, there was just a lot of it's a great rock scene, you know, I mean, so many great clubs. And, you know, I lived in New York City during some very, very good days. Right. I think I really lived there in the Halcyon years from like 95 to 2010. Yeah. But I also lived there in the time where I saw all the great rock clubs start to shut down, like Don Hills and Brownies and CBGBs and Continental and, you know, all these great spots. And but no new ones ever sprouted back up again. Yeah. And when I came back to Jersey, I realized, like, wow, Jersey still has a strong scene and a good club level rock scene out here. So I think so. Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing Twisted Sister sneaking into the Chatterbox in Seaside Heights off the boardwalk there, and when I was like 16 with my fake ID. And so, you know, I was really able to be exposed to a lot of these bands, but having to be able to say, like, I could email Dee Snider and, you know, talk to him or have a conversation with him or sit at dinner with Ace Frehley in Las Vegas. Those wires would never have crossed in my young mind, but here we are.
Right. I know that's the most amazing thing for me that I'm experiencing as well. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you who I watched on that metal show, which is exciting to meet you and connect with you and talk about metal and bands and just the world that we live in now where, I can get the chance to reach out and communicate and talk with my heroes and people that have always inspired me. And I just think that that's so amazing. And what's so cool about it is people in music in particular, other than other fields of entertainment, they all really seem to want this the symbiotic relationship. We're looking out for each other. Comedy is a mixed bag. I know you know that too. It can be a little dog eat dog. You usually end up finding your group. You find your crew that you are excited to. You find out you're on a lineup with them, or you're going to roll and meet up at this pub afterwards or whatever. But that was the hard part, because comedy is you're a sole person on stage telling jokes. And I know a lot of the mindset of some of others, not all, everybody. I'm not shit talking comics, but it can get very selfish, and it can get
clicky. Yeah, for
it
sure.
can get clicky and selfish. And I think the one thing that's so refreshing about bands and music is, so far in my experience, now you've been in the game a lot longer than I have, I just haven't ran across people that have been the same way, or at least treated me the same way as the comedy world did a little bit, and the acting world. Don't even get me started, Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation. I did that to all that stuff, but yeah, man, I did. I got, again, it just the luck of running into somebody like a Florentine and having him take me under his wing and be my first mentor ever in comedy, and to realize our little crew of Jersey comics were so supportive of each other, and everybody tried to help each other. If somebody got into a club, you help the next person, and so on and so forth. Is there friendly competition amongst us? Of course there is.
Sure.
I love competition, but I like when it's friendly competition, because I think it's much more positive, it's more constructive, and bands have that too. You think a support band does not want to try to blow the headliner off the stage? Of course they do.
Of course.
They're not trying to be assholes, but they're going out there saying, hey, we're a great band too, and they want to give the audience a good show. But I've been lucky. The people that I've met in comedy, the people I've met in music, are all just real decent people. It would suck to have got into this world of heavy music and have access to all these people, and have done a talk show where I have to talk to these people, and it turns out they're all assholes.
Right.
There's so few.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to find one, to be honest. So lucky in that way as well. But when I do my comedy albums, I try to, even with that, I try to pay it forward. It's like every album is a tribute to one of my favorite bands. So when I go out and do press for it, what do I end up talking about? On this album, I'm talking about Motorhead, through a lot of my interviews, and that just keeps that legend alive in whatever little way that I can. My
That's
last
so
album
cool.
was Saxon. So I talked about Saxon on the last one, Judas Priest before that, and Thin Lizzy. So it's all good. We all help each other out. And of course, everybody on stage wants to be the best that they can be.
Yeah. That's so cool. I'm so glad you mentioned that everybody who should go check out your comedy albums know that they've got kind of a through line, a theme, and this one being Motorhead. You have Phil Campbell kicking off the album, which is awesome.
Yeah. I'm so happy. It's been great to get to know Phil. I did a little tour with him. He's got a band now with his kids, Phil Campbell, the Bastard Sons.
Yeah, and it's his 3 kids, right?
Yeah, and
that's
they're
so cool.
Legit great band. I mean, and I toured with them in England last year with Black Star Riders and Michael Monroe, and I mentioned to Phil then, I go, I think I'm going to do a Motorhead tribute on my next album. I'd love if you play the intro. And he said to me at the time, no problem. But I never hold anybody to anything.
Sure, right?
That they say in the heat of the moment. But he was true to his word, and he did it for me, and it was great. And in absence of Lemmy, of course, not being with us, there's a great tribute called Head Motor in New Jersey here. And the guy that plays Lemmy is so great. And he did the voiceover as Lemmy introducing me with Phil's guitar playing underneath. And it's my favorite part of the album. It's like, when I start talking, that's when the album goes to shit.
That's great. Oh my God. Well, so tell me now, is there a tour planned for this record that you're working on?
no formal tour, just
No formal tour?
doing shows, all across the country. So
Yeah.
people can follow me on my socials, see where I'm playing.
Yeah.
I got some bunch of summer dates coming up, and this is one of the few summers I actually haven't been out on a tour with a band.
Right.
So I'm just kind of piecing it together as I go. But I love doing both equally. So
Yeah.
I never feel like I'm missing one thing or the other. When I'm out with a band, I miss the comedy clubs. When I'm just doing comedy clubs,
Sure.
I kind of miss being out with with a band on a tour bus, conquering from town to town and all
Yes.
that. But it's in my book, it's all good. And I'm, as long as I'm out working and hopefully making people laugh, life is good.
That's amazing. Any plans to come to LA? Because if you are, we're hanging out.
For sure, I'd love to, man. That'd be great.
Yeah. When you come out, let me know.
I haven't done anything in a few years there. The last thing I did there was a couple of years ago, a Metal Blade event. But no, I hope to get back out there. I did a record there, and in the theme of doing my records in kind of oddball places, I did my album in a speakeasy.
Oh, awesome.
In North Hollywood, a legit LA County had no idea.
I think I might know what that place is. I think so. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's closed now, but the guy who ran it is a sound engineer. So the room was wired for sounds. He used to record bands in that room.
That's amazing.
But at night, it was, the design and everything was like the old speakeasies. And if people want to start Googling speakeasy who are under 50, back in the Prohibition days when you had to run, when booze was illegal and you had to run these secret clubs and but with a proper bar and a bartender and stage and entertainment and I thought that I got to do an album in a speakeasy. Imagine I get raided during the show.
Right.
What a great ending to the record,
The place gets raided. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I said I might know the place, but LA has had a ton of speakeasies that come and go over the years. So I was thinking, I've probably been to that place, but who knows? I've been out here for 20 plus years. So you see, bars come and go, but you definitely have to let me know if you come out. We'll go to the Rainbow Room. We'll stand next to the Lemmy statue, get a photo. Especially based on this album. But before I let you go, I wanted to ask maybe, some of the unbelievable live concert experiences that you've had through your life. And I'm sure it's pretty impossible to pick one, but would you tell me one that was like, this is up there with one of the best live shows I've ever seen in my life?
Well, I think because it was my first, it would have to be, I guess it was 1982. Judas Priest on the Point of Entry tour.
Nice.
Iron Maiden opening. Iron Maiden on the Killers tour. So with Paul Di'Anno, not Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah.
Played here in Asbury Park, New Jersey at the Convention Center. And I was actually a Maiden fan, way more than a Priest fan at the time.
Yeah.
So I was really just going for Maiden. And then when Priest came on and Rob Halford came out on the motorcycle, and I said, oh my God, this is insane. So just the effect that had on me at whatever it was, so 82. So I was 15 or 15 maybe at the time. I remember my parents had to drop me and my buddy off for the show, and we came out and we couldn't hear anything. It was so loud. And
totally.
I think that one that just had such a major effect on me. And then finding out years later that a couple other Jersey guys named Jim Florentine and Eddie Trunk also were in attendance at that show. Of course, we did not know each other at that time at all.
That's amazing. You guys were all there? Yeah,
and I think we all had the same. I think it had the same effect on all of us as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's kismet. That's amazing. Just destined to come together. And then I would say, you've interviewed hundreds of iconic rock stars, metal legends, just people all over. You've been at this and really know your shit. Is there a really unforgettable moment where you're getting a chance to kind of have a one-on-one with a singer, a musician, or somebody that you're like, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm sitting across from this person right now. Do you have one of those? Many.
You know what, man? I pinch myself. I really do.
All the time.
to walk out of my dressing room on That Metal Show and Bill Ward standing in the hallway, and he looks up at me and says, "How you doing, Don?"
Oh, that's great.
And I'm like, "How are you doing, Don?" Why would Bill Ward even know my name? He's friggin' Bill Ward. He shouldn't know who I am. This is ridiculous. Like, I was just always blown away. Now, I'm never starstruck, and I never have it in my life, but it's never lost on me that these are iconic people. These are the people that I've worshiped my whole life. To sit and talk to Alice Cooper, who's just one of the nicest
guy. Everything you ever see about that dude, you're like, what a nice guy. Holy shit.
And then for making a television show, I like the guys who are, in my podcast that I've done, I like the guys who say it like it is, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Ted Nugent. And then you don't have to say another word for a half hour because, right. Ted's gonna take it over, and always a great guest. Whether you love him or hate him, you're gonna watch. Guys like him, Phil Anselmo, Dave Mustaine. These are guys who are completely uncensored, who shoot from the hip, and I always appreciate that because, again, I know people have to tune in to hear what they're gonna say. Love them or not.
Yeah.
And but to have even Lemmy. Lemmy, of course, my hero. Not always the easiest guy to interview. Sometimes he will mumble a bit, and with his heavy British accent, you sometimes had trouble understanding him. But I didn't care because I'm like, if he just sits here and smokes and doesn't say a word, it's still the coolest show ever.
Totally, you've got Lemmy. Yeah, it's just he's there. It's amazing. His presence alone.
I had a Jack and Coke with Lemmy. Everything's gravy after that.
Yeah, bucket list. That's amazing. Yeah, and I feel the same. I feel like whenever I get a chance to meet, some of my heroes, it's not about being starstruck. It's just feeling kind of like, what a cool moment in time that somebody that I really admire, I'm getting a chance to spend with them. And what I found in the few years that I've been able to connect with people is that they love music like you do. They love music. And the moment you get them talking about, something they're listening to or something that's blowing their mind, it's like all ideas of the famous, the celebrity, the rock star just fall away. And suddenly we're all 11 putting on Kiss Destroyer and going, oh, you know what I mean? Like that part of us just stays there forever. And no matter how, people are raised up as icons and whatnot, they still have that music love that drove them to pick up a guitar or start singing and playing music, or just spending their entire lives dedicated to loving music. And that's what brings us all together. So
there it is. That's exactly how my album ends.
Yes.
Where I talk about how music is the healer and the uniter. And everything you just said is exactly what I say on there. Of course, with some jokes thrown in as well, but the message is exactly the same. If don't put your faith in phony Hollywood, don't put your faith in politics. Here's the one thing that unites everybody: our love for music. And it's not waned one iota in my life, and I'm almost in my 40s now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're almost as old as me, Don.
Yeah, I'm getting there, dude.
Climb it up. No, I love that. So you should definitely go listen to his album. Listen to those closing thoughts that he gives there with the jokes. So if you want to hear like an inspiring but funny version of it, you got to go listen to it. But it's so true, dude. It's one of those things that brings us all together. And I'm just grateful that you took the time to come on my show and talk with me about your comedy, about your love of music, about your amazing career. And I'm looking forward to when you do make your way all the way across the country, opposite side, we can go out and have a beer, listen to some bands, check out some comedy, and lean over and be like, we're funnier. We're way funnier than that guy.
Exactly right. For sure. No, get your email to me, I guess through Nikki or whatever. And
I definitely will. I'll
let you know when I'm out there. But whatever we do, we'll end up at the Rainbow either way.
We have to. Now it's agreed. It's agreed.
Well, the night will always end with Lemmy.
Yeah, it'll always end with Lemmy. The night ends with Lemmy. That's perfect. Well, Don Jameson, you've been a fantastic guest on Waterproof Records. I'm so glad you came on the show today, and I had a blast just talking about bands and just all the cool things you've been up to. So everybody, make sure you go check out his latest comedy album, No Sleep Till McSorley's. And you should get the vinyl version. And I'm sure you have a website. Is it just donjameson.com? Is it?
Well, go to, for the vinyl, go to experiencevinyl.com.
Okay.
I partnered with, actually, it's Matt Sorum, former Guns N'
Guns
Roses.
N' Roses. I know Matt Sorum. Yeah, that's awesome.
Has his own vinyl company. And,
That's rad.
With a mutual friend of ours. And so they're the ones doing the special editions. So I told you at the beginning, McSorley's only has light ale and dark ale. So the vinyl variants are light colored ale and dark colored ale.
Oh, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So definitely go check out that vinyl. Yeah, look for Don coming to a city near you. Maybe he'll be playing a comedy show. You can go up and be like, "Hey, I heard you on Waterproof Records," and make me look cool for once.
There you go. I had a great time. Thank you, dude.
Awesome, dude. See ya. That was great. I loved having Don Jameson on the show. He was a great guest. We definitely clicked on a lot of the things that we liked. I loved hearing about him listening to Kiss Destroyer. You know, I'm really not well versed on my Kiss. I need to fix that. I was recently on a show called Shout It Out Loudcast. I was on one of their other podcasts, which is a Kiss-centric thing. And I know a lot of the hits, like I said on the show, but I think it's time that I do a deep dive and learn a little bit more about the band and dig into some of their older records. But if you've never heard Destroyer, I listened to it a few times before I had Don on the show, and it's a fun rockin' record. Of course, it has Detroit Rock City on there, and the ballad Beth that got them a lot of the crossover, where people were giving them a chance and listening to them because it was so much more of a slow ballad. But it's a really fun record, and I had a lot of fun listening to it, and Don was a great guest on the show. So check out his comedy albums, and thanks again for listening to Waterproof Records. I can't do this show without your support, so thank you for being here. I appreciate it more than anything, and I'm so happy to be a part of Pantheon Podcasts, where my audience is growing. I've seen it myself, and it's very, very cool, so I'm happy to be in this network and this community of other music-centric podcasts, and I'm so grateful for Pantheon Podcasts for coming along and snatching me up. So thank you, Pantheon Podcast. And once again, a shout out to DistroKid, my sponsor, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof to get the 30% off your first year of uploading your music. So thanks again for joining me. Thank you, Don Jameson. We'll see you on the road. We'll see you in LA. We'll go stand next to Lemmy and we'll take a picture. Yeah, rock on. See you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna